student, welcome to my class 7, chapter 2, New Kings and Kingdoms.
Dynasty, kingdom and empire. Dynasty means a family of rulers who rule over a country for a long period of time. For example, Gupta dynasty, Mauryan dynasty. Mauryan dynasty में the first ruler was Chandragupta Maurya. Then his son Bindusar came to power. Then Bindusar's son Ashok came to power. So it can be called a dynasty. Then kingdom. Kingdom means any country which is ruled by a monarch, that is a king or queen. Whereas an empire is a large kingdom. एक kingdom के अंदर एक king या queen एक territory पे rule करता है. Whereas in an empire, a king or a queen rules over many regions and many areas. So, for example, British Empire, Mauryan Empire. Now let's start with the first topic of the chapter, emergence of new dynasties. पहले के टाइम पे बहुत सारे प्रिंस राजा इसलिए बने क्योंकि उन्होंने अपना राज्य इनहेरिट किया. उनके फादर ने, when he became old, he gave his kingdom to his son. But there were many people who became kings not because they inherited the property, but because of their power, their influence. They were able to gain control over a large area and they declared themselves to be the king of that area. One such example is of Samantas. अभी Samantas थे कौन? या तो वो बहुत बड़े जमींदार थे यानी लैंडलॉर्ड, और they were warrior chiefs यानी कि वो सेनापति थे. लेकिन they were always subordinate to the existing king of that area. They used to collect taxes from their area, and from that money they used to maintain military, and they provided military support to the king whenever the king required it. They used to take gifts to the king as well. But many of the Samantas over time gained a lot of power and wealth, and as a result they declared themselves independent of the king of that area and gave themselves very high sounding titles like Mahasamant or Mahamandaleshwara. So over time a Samanta became a king, but this did not happen with all the Samantas. Another example of emergence of new kings and dynasties is of Rashtrakuta, Kadamba and Gurjara Pratihara dynasty. Let's start with Rashtrakutas. Students, you have read about Chalukya dynasty in your class 6 history book. Chalukyas were ruling over Karnataka, and Danti Durg जो था वो Chalukyas के अंडर एक सामंत था. So over time, Danti Durg became very powerful and he fought a battle with his Chalukya overlord, and that battle Danti Durg won, and he became the founder of Rashtrakuta dynasty. But he was not a Kshatriya by birth, so he performed a ritual. That ritual was called Hiranyagarbha, and whosoever performed that ritual, ये माना जाता था कि he will become a Kshatriya even if by birth he is not a Kshatriya. Then another example is of Kadam and Gurjara Pratihara dynasty. Both the dynasties were actually ruled by people who were not Kshatriyas by birth. Maurya Sharman and Harishchandra, they both were Brahmins and they both belonged to very rich Brahmin families. Gradually, in order to establish their power, उन्होंने हथियार उठा लिए, उन्होंने लड़ाइयाँ की, military maintain की, and they established their kingdoms. So Maurya Sharman became the first ruler of Kadam dynasty, and Harishchandra became the first ruler of Gurjara Pratihara dynasty. Okay, so this is the image of the map given in book. This map is showing various dynasties and areas ruled by them. So we just talked about Gurjara Pratiharas. They ruled over areas of Rajasthan. Rashtrakutas, they ruled over Western Deccan, and this portion of Western Deccan was ruled earlier by Chalukyas. And that purple oval, it is pointing to portions of Karnataka, and it was ruled by Kadam dynasty. And then there were Palas who ruled over Bengal, and there were many other dynasties like Kaling dynasty, Utkal dynasty, Chehras, Cholas, Pandyas, etc. एक राजा की लाइफ जीना जितना आसान है, उससे कहीं ज्यादा मुश्किल है अपने राज्य को, अपने किंगडम को चलाना. So in this topic we are going to study how kings administer their kingdoms. In order to show that they are very powerful, kings gave themselves high-sounding titles. For example, Maharaja Adhiraj, which means overlord of the kings, यानी कि राजाओं का भी राजा. Then another title is त्रिभुवन चक्रवर्तन. इसका मतलब तीनों लोगों का राजा, धरती आकाश पताल तीनों लोगों का राजा. लेकिन इतने हाई साउंडिंग टाइटल्स दे तो दिए, मगर kings were not powerful all alone. They needed the help of their samans. They needed the help of association of peasants, brahmins, traders, etc. And in order to run their kingdom, kings collected taxes. They collected taxes from peasants. Peasants were those people who worked under a landlord, or cattle keepers, यानी कि जो गाय भैंस पालते हैं, produce से ना गुजारा करते हैं, and then artisans who used to work with hand. So they all gave taxes to the king. But why did the kings collect taxes? They collected it to finance their establishments. यानी कि अपने राजमहल को चलाना. They had to give salaries to their soldiers, expenditures on food, expenditures on jewelry, clothing, furniture, etc. And then they used these taxes to construct massive structures like forts, temples, and palaces. And they also used it to wage wars. यानी कि किसी और king से लड़ाई करने के लिए बहुत सारा पैसा चाहिए होता था, and that money came from taxes. The next topic is Prashastis and land grants. But what were Prashastis? Prashastis were Sanskrit poems written by Brahmins in praise of kings. यानी कि ये संस्कृत में लिखी गई वो कविताएं थी जिसमें सिर्फ राजाओं की तारीफ थी. कि जरूरी नहीं है कि whatever was written in Prashasti was true. Prashastis showed the kings as great achievers, victorious, fearless, valiant. यानी कि एक राजा ने अपनी लड़ाई में कितनी ही लड़ाइयां हारी हो, कितना ही वीक हो रहा हो, पर प्रशस्ति में हमेशा ये बताया गया कि the king is very fearless, he was very valiant यानी courageous, and उसने बहुत सारा कुछ अपनी लाइफ में अचीव किया. But there is one प्रशस्ति author who needs a special mention here, and that is Kalhan. Kalhan, he composed his Prashasti for kings who ruled over Kashmir. But unlike other authors of Prashastis, he was often critical about the rulers and their policies. यानी कि अगर एक रूलर ने अच्छी पॉलिसीज नहीं बनाई, अच्छे काम नहीं किए, so he wrote negatively about them as well. Now the next topic is land grants, very revered one within Hinduism. And kings, in order to give respect to the Brahmins, often rewarded them by grant of land. यानी कि free में Brahmins को land दिया जाता था so that they can teach children over there, they can study over there, and these gifts of land grants were recorded on copper plates. जैसे आज हमारे पास property के documents होते हैं, at that point of time, if a land was gifted to a Brahmin, it was recorded but on a copper plate. Next topic is warfare for wealth. Children, you must have studied or heard that kings used to fight a lot of battles in their life. But why did they do this? They did it to control other areas and to gain more and more wealth, and for this they had to fight war. Now, the first example of dynasties which fought for expansion and wealth is Gurjara Pratihara, Pala, and Rashtrakuta dynasties. They all fought for control over Kannauj, and in this struggle, since three parties were involved, it was called as tripartite struggle. But why did they all want to control Kannauj? Kannauj was a commercially very, very important place as it lied on the Ganga trade route. The next example is of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni. Ghazni is a place in Afghanistan. Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni ruled over parts of Central Asia, Iran, northwestern parts of Indian subcontinent. But do you know, children, his aim was not to set up an empire in India or to rule over people of India. Rather, his main aim was to plunder wealth of India. And for plundering wealth, he targeted wealthy temples. For example, Somnath temple in Gujarat. He looted the wealth from there and then went back to his place called GHAZNI. He even wanted somebody to write an account of Indian subcontinent. So for that, he hired a scholar named Al-Biruni. And the book that Al-Biruni wrote was Kitab al-Hind. The next example of a dynasty which fought for expansion is Chauhans, also known as Chahamanas. They ruled over Delhi and Ajmer. उन्होंने कोशिश की West and East India में भी expand करने की, but वो नहीं कर पाए because they were opposed by Chalukyas of Gujarat and Gahadwalas of Western UP. The best known and the most famous Chahamana ruler was Prithviraj Chauhan III. Prithviraj Chauhan, he defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191, but after defeating Muhammad Ghori, he just allowed him to go. Next year, in 1192, Muhammad Ghori again attacked him, and this time Prithviraj Chauhan lost the battle and died. He was killed in the battle. But there's one more very famous story about Prithviraj Chauhan's death. According to this story, Prithviraj Chauhan did not die in the battle. Rather, Muhammad Ghori, after defeating him, took him to Ghor. Ghor is a place in present-day Afghanistan. वहां पे ले जाने के बाद उन्होंने पृथ्वीराज चौहान को अंधा कर दिया. And then later in an archery competition, he challenged Prithviraj to shoot an arrow on a target just by listening to the sound. यानी कि वो चाहते थे कि पृथ्वीराज चौहान उन्हें एक शब्द भेदी बाण चला के दिखाए. पृथ्वीराज accepted this challenge because he was very talented in this technique of shooting an arrow. And he saw this as an opportunity as well. But पृथ्वीराज ने बोला कि सुल्तान गौरी को 2 या 3 बार instructions देनी होगी just before he shoots. So Muhammad Ghori accepted, and the moment Muhammad Ghori spoke something, Prithviraj, instead of attacking the target, he shot the arrow straight into the heart of Muhammad Ghori, and Muhammad Ghori got killed there and then. And in all this, Prithviraj was helped by his friend. So before Muhammad Ghori's army could kill Prithviraj, he and his friend, they both killed each other. And this is how the story ended. Okay, children, so the next topic is Chola Empire. Let's take a closer look at Chola Empire, its temples, its sculptures, and administration. Before proceeding further, children, let's take a closer look at the map. Can you see River Kaveri and Delta of River Kaveri on the map? Can you see Thanjavur and Urayur, 2 important towns? अब बात करते हैं Cholas की. Who were they? They were not kings initially. Rather, they were subordinate to Pallavas. Pallav dynasty, south में एक ruling dynasty थी पहले, and Cholas, they were just subordinate to Pallavas, and they held power in Urayur. यानी कि Urayur में Cholas rule करते थे, just like a Samant, वो वहाँ पे power holds करते थे. And similarly to Cholas, there were Muttarayars who held power in regions around Kaveri Delta, but the king of that area or the main ruling dynasty of that area was Pallavas. Then one day, Vijay Alya, a Chola chief, he captured Kaveri Delta from Muttarayar. यानी कि Cholas ने Muttarayar के साथ लड़ाई की और Kaveri Delta हथिया लिया. And then gradually, Cholas built a new town, that is the town of Thanjavur, and they also built a temple of goddess Nishamba Sudini there. So gradually, from a small kingdom, Cholas built a huge empire. The Pandya dynasty, the Pallav dynasty, and many other areas in south and north of India became part of Chola kingdom. Rajaraja I, who was the most famous and powerful Chola ruler, he became king in 985 Common Era, and he expanded his control over many areas. उन्होंने अपने kingdom का administration भी दुरुस्त किया, यानी reorganize किया, and then his son Rajendra I, he also kept on expanding, and he even raided Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka, countries of Southeast Asia, and he even developed a huge army for these expeditions as well as a huge navy. Take a look at the territories ruled by Cholas. The blue portion is showing those territories which were directly ruled by Cholas, and the pink portion that's showing the areas where Cholas had their huge influence. Cholas were famous not only because they built a big empire, but they were also famous because of their temples. Rajaraja and Rajendra built many temples in their dynasty, and especially at Thanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram. ये टेम्पल्स इतने फेमस हो गए कि हर साल बहुत हजारों लोग इन्हें देखने के लिए आते थे, एंड एज अ रिजल्ट many people who were craft producers, who were garland makers, and they settled over there और वहां पे ही उन्हें काम मिला. Temples got huge amount of land from the king, and उस land से क्या किया जाता था, उस land के ऊपर cultivation भी होता था, and various other activities went on those lands, और उस land से जो भी कमाई होती थी that was used to maintain those specialists who worked at and lived near the temple. यानी कि पुजारी, माला बनाने वाले, cooks, सफाई कर्मचारी, musicians, etc. उनको सैलरी देना, उनको उनके खर्चे पूरे करना, all this was done from the money that was earned because of the lands that were gifted by the king. Beautiful pictures of Chola temples. The first image is of Brihadiswara temple at Thanjavur, and the second one is of Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple. And do you know, children, around these temples there lived many bronze sculptors who made beautiful bronze images, and bronze sculptures made during Chola time period were amongst the finest in the world. Next topic is agriculture. How did the Chola rulers improve agriculture? Children, खेती करने के लिए दो चीजें बहुत जरूरी हैं, and they are land and water. Chola rulers cleared forest areas to bring more land under cultivation, as more land under cultivation means more production of crops, and then crops and fields had to be watered. So for irrigation, wells were dug, canals were built, and tanks were constructed to collect rainwater. You can see the images of well and canal. Canal, what's canal? Canal is a channel of water that is connected to a reservoir, and reservoir in turn is connected to a dam, and dam is constructed on the main river. Then tanks were built to collect rainwater. That means a rainwater harvesting technique was used during the Chola time period. And embankments were also constructed to prevent flooding. Now, what is embankment? You can see the image. Embankment is a wall that is constructed to prevent the river from flooding. कई बार channels में या canals में पानी बहुत ज्यादा हो जाता है, स्पेसिफिकली बारिशों के टाइम पे. सो बहुत खतरा रहता है कि आसपास के इलाकों में बाढ़ आ सकती है क्योंकि चैनल्स ओवरफ्लो करते हैं. सो इन दैट केस, इन ऑर्डर टू प्रिवेंट दैट, these walls are constructed. They are like V-shaped walls, and they prevent the water from overflowing the channels. And then Kaveri River was also used to provide water for irrigation. Kaveri River has many channels, and those channels used to flood the nearby areas during rainy season, and that made the soil fertile as well. So here is another map. Can you see Gangaikonda, Cholapuram, Thanjavur and Urayur? They are all situated on the banks of river Kaveri. So river Kaveri was an important source of irrigation for all three towns. These are the pictures of sluice gate. Sluice gate is a sliding gate for controlling the flow of water. The smallest image at the top, it's the image given in the book. Now these sluice gates were also used during Chola time period. Can you see the red arrows? These gates, when they are pulled up, the water flows to the other side, and when they are pulled down, the flow of water can be stopped. This is done to maintain the flow of water specifically during rainy season, when the flow of water becomes too heavy and it can cause flooding in the nearby areas. So children, before moving to the next topic, that is administration under Chola Empire, it is necessary to understand meaning of certain terms. The first term is Ar. Ar means a settlement of peasants. Peasants कौन है? These are those people who work under a landlord. एक landlord की जमीन के ऊपर खेती करते हैं, and for using their land they pay tax. either in the form of money or अगर पैसा नहीं है तो they used to give part of their produce to the landlord, and generally second option was opted. So एक विलेज में बहुत सारी पेजेंट कम्युनिटीज थी, पेजेंट कास्ट थी, उस ग्रुप को कहा जाता था अर. एंड नेक्स्ट इज नारू. ग्रुप ऑफ विलेजेस विद सेटलमेंट्स ऑफ पेजेंट्स वाज कॉल्ड नारू. यानी कि हर विलेज में बहुत सारी पेजेंट्स की कम्युनिटीज थी. ऑल दोस कम्युनिटीज इन विलेज 1, विलेज 2, विलेज 3 and so on, they all were taken together and they were called naru. And velala is the next term. Velala is a caste of rich peasants. Peasants में भी बहुत सारी caste थी. One such caste was velala and they were rich peasants. And the next term is brahmadeya. Brahmadeya is a land gifted to Brahmins by kings. And these gifts were recorded on copper plates as shown in the image. नेक्स्ट टॉपिक इज चोला एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, यानी कि चोलास अपना राज्य का काम किस तरह से चलाते थे. So Chola administration was very well organized and efficient. Cholas had a large army and they were a monarchy. So they administered their kingdom in following ways. In every Chola village, the communities of people were majorly divided into two groups, that is Brahmins and non-Brahmins. The assembly of Brahmin people was called as Sabha and the assembly of non-Brahmin people were called as Naru. जैसे कि आपने आज सुना होगा students union, teachers union, laborers union. So it was not a union but it could be called an assembly. So Brahmins की assembly को सभा बोलते थे and non-Brahmins की assembly जो थी, that was a peasant assembly, it was called Naru. So विलेज के कामकाज को देखने के लिए, in order to administer the village, rich peasants of Velala caste, they exercised considerable control over affairs of Naru. यानी कि जो peasant group था उसके अंदर although बहुत सारी communities थी, but the main community was Velala caste because they were rich. So peasants of Velala caste, they handled majority of the issues and they took major decisions for controlling the affairs of Naru. And then there were association of traders also, who were called as Nagaram. Traders वो लोग होते हैं जो एक जगह से दूसरी जगह goods को buy and sell करते हैं. So association of traders was called as Nagaram, and at times within the Chola administration, they were also asked to handle some functions. Brahmin assembly का main काम क्या होता था? Brahmins, as we studied earlier, Brahmins were given gifts of land by the kings. So their main function was to look after that land, which was called Brahmadeya. उस land पे cultivation भी होता था, उस land पे temple भी होता था, charity work भी होता था, उसमें irrigation भी संभालना होता था. So to look after all that work, they also had their communities, and that was the main work of Brahmin village assembly. And sabha में election होते थे in order to choose the members of committee. Elections used to take place, and elections को जीतना आसान नहीं था. You could contest elections only if those Brahmins had their own house, they were aged between 35 to 70, they were well versed in Vedas and administrative matters, they were honest, etc. So here are some important terms from the chapter. Pause the video here, watch them, understand them, and learn them. Let's recall certain facts. Gurjara Pratihara ruled over Rajasthan and Gujarat. Rashtrakutas ruled over Western Deccan. Palas ruled over Bengal. Cholas over Tamil Nadu. Chalukyas over Karnataka. Pallavas over Kanchipuram in South India. Here are some important questions for you, and you'll find the answer within the video and from the book.
So today's our topic is complete. I hope you understand in my class. Related assignment to this chapter uploaded soon in your school website. Do all the assignment in your notebook and click the photo and upload new WhatsApp group. Thank you.